Part 1. Monsters walk among us. I know how that sounds, but please believe me. I've been dealing with this alone for years. Not even my wife and kids know what I'm about to share here. Please, hear me out before you judge me. It's kind of a long story, so sorry in advance, and thanks for your patience. It all started in the summer of '91 in a small town in the American Midwest. I was 16 at the time, and my life revolved around pizza and video games. Of course, back then we played video games mainly at the arcade, and being addicted to the arcade and pizza wasn't cheap. It was a tight-knit neighborhood, so kids going door to door offering to mow lawns or wash cars for cash wasn't uncommon. Every day the goal was the same. Wake up, earn some money, get a slice, and drop all your quarters on the best pixels money could buy back then. Those were the days in blissful suburbia. There was an oddity in our community, however. An old German man who lived at the end of the street named Mr. Baumann. Kids, being kids, referred to him as the Nazi. Why, you may ask? It's because it was 1991, and kids are jerks. That's about it. Some people took it to the extreme, though, like this kid named Derek, who used his dad's spray paint to draw a swastika on the side of Mr. Bowman's house. When his dad found out, Derek was grounded the rest of the summer, and even had to help Mr. Bowman paint over his graffiti. I never really had much of an opinion of Mr. Bowman. He didn't seem all too weird or scary to me. He was only mysterious because he kept to himself. But if you managed to catch sight of him on one of his daily walks, he would smile warmly and wave. Well, one day, I was waiting to meet up with a group of friends at the end of the street, just standing on the sidewalk outside Mr. Bowman's house. I could hear some old-timey music drifting out of his window while I waited. Not really my type of music, but it was soothing and matched the friendly neighborhood aesthetic. One by one, the gang arrived, just shooting the breeze and hyping ourselves up for the new high scores we'd set that day. We must have been getting loud, because we caught a glimpse of Mr. Bowman staring at us from the window. Not knowing what to do, I waved, and with a smile, he waved back and walked off out of sight. Some of the other guys snickered, and one of them said, "I dare you to sneak in and steal his Nazi medals." "What?" I snorted. "You do it. I'll give you $10 to sneak in when he goes for a walk. He's got to have some type of Nazi memorabilia in his basement or something," the boy said, as he waved a crisp $10 bill in my face. This changed things. It wasn't a lot of money, but it seemed like an easy $10 at the time. So, I went to snatch the money out of the kid's hand, but he pulled away. "First you have to get in, then we'll pay you when you get out," the boy said with a smirk as he folded the bill back into his wallet. So, we camped out across the street from Mr. Bowman's house, doing our best to look inconspicuous. I remember my hands starting to get unbearably sweaty from nervousness, and right when I was about to call it off, Mr. Bowman stepped off his porch, heading to the park for his daily constitutional. My heart sank. I really had to do it now, I thought. Our eyes were glued to Mr. Bowman as he limped down the street out of sight. When he was far enough away, the guys shooed me off towards his house. I started to panic a bit and awkwardly scrambled up to the front door, but it was locked. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Maybe all entrances were locked. That's what I had hoped, at least. I casually strolled to the backyard and hopped the fence, but the back door was locked too. Well, that's that, I thought. However, when I looked back over the fence to the guys, it looked like they were miming, "Try the windows." I started pushing on all the windows I could reach, but none would give. I didn't care about the $10 anymore. I started walking around the house again, making my way back towards the front, when I noticed the basement window was slightly ajar. I stopped in front of it, and seriously considered walking away from it. I looked back to my friends, and it was like some kind of male bravado took hold of me, and before I knew it, I was cramming myself through the small window of Mr. Bowman's basement. I dropped in and stumbled as I landed, falling to my knees. The room was small and almost empty, except for an old bike, a shovel, and some other miscellaneous lawn care items. As my eyes adjusted to the dark of the basement, I noticed a door and made my way to it. It was an old wooden door covered in dust like everything else in the room. When I opened the door to proceed deeper into the basement, searching for the stairs, the door creaked so loudly that I winced and stopped dead in my tracks. Even though I knew Mr. Bowman had left, the gravity of the situation began to set in, and the desire to turn back was greater than ever. I was supposed to be at the arcade, not committing a B&E. I took a deep breath and proceeded through the doorway. Upon entering, I instantly saw the stairs, but my attention was quickly drawn to my right of this larger basement room. As I approached, I noticed garlands of garlic hanging from the ceiling, and in fact, I even began to smell them. I was becoming unnerved by this strange display, but quickly reassured myself that this must be how Europeans stored certain foods, and it's actually not that weird at all. I came upon a desk with papers, trinkets, photos, and an inkwell. Obviously, this was a makeshift study, but why set it up in a dank basement, I thought. I began surveying the room again, now noticing boxes and craters under the stairs, as well as some around the desk. At that moment, I heard a door close upstairs, and footsteps creaking the boards above me. I panicked and started backpedaling right into some crates. I fell backwards onto the cool concrete, knocking the wind out of me. One of the crates had broken open, spilling its contents everywhere. "Who's there?" A deep, muffled voice called out from the floor above. The floorboards began creaking at a faster rate. My blood turned to ice in my veins. I couldn't believe I had actually landed myself in this situation. I tried getting to my feet, but I was sliding around on rounded wooden stakes. As I finally gathered myself from the floor, the door to the basement swung open, revealing an elderly man. I was staring right into the face of Mr. Bowman, and he stared back at me. There were a few seconds of uncomfortable silence.
"Thomas, what are you doing in my basement? How did you get in?"
The old man asked sternly.
I came in through the window. One of the basement windows was open," I stammered.
The man didn't say anything. He looked me up and down, sizing me up. I just averted my gaze down to my feet. The quiet was agonizing.
"Well, did you find what you are looking for?"
The old man asked in a thick German accent. I looked up with a jolt, meeting his gaze again. What? I asked, as my voice cracked in fear that he somehow had ascertained the truth of my mission. The old man just laughed and started walking down the steps towards me.
"You didn't hurt yourself, did you?"
he inquired, as his eyes scanned me for injuries.
No, I'm fine. I accidentally broke your crate, though. Mr. Bowman, I'm really sorry. It was a stupid dare."
I trailed off as he raised a finger to quiet me.
"It's okay. I was young and dumb once, too," he said with a laugh. "Don't worry about the crate either. Actually, I'm glad you're here." "You are?" "Yes, indeed, my boy. I need someone to help me move some of these boxes. I'll pay you well, too,"
he added quickly. He pulled out his wallet and flashed a $100 bill. My mouth was agape, and my mind started racing, thinking about all the things I could do with that money.
"So, are you interested?"
"Yes, sir. What boxes do you need moved?" I asked eagerly.
"Come back tomorrow, around 3 in the afternoon, and we will discuss the details," he said.
I deflated a little at the thought of having to come back the next day, but at least Mr. Bowman wasn't mad at me. I followed Mr. Bowman up the stairs and to his front door. We said goodbye, and I raced off from his porch down the street to catch up with my friends. When I was within earshot, I called after them, and they looked back at me as if I had risen from the grave. I slowed my momentum and stopped right in front of them. I bent down, grabbing my knees while I caught my breath.
"I'll take that $10 now,"
I said between deep breaths.
"Dude, how the hell did you make it out without getting caught?"
one of the boys asked. I took another deep breath and said,
"I did get caught. I have to go back tomorrow and help move some boxes." "Well, did you find anything?"
the boy asked inquisitively.
"Yeah, just some garlic and dust, but the deal was to break in and look around, remember? You never said I had to bring anything back,"
I said triumphantly. I extended out my hand for my reward, and the boy begrudgingly slapped the cash into my palm. The pizza that day never tasted better. The next day, I returned to Mr. Bowman's. I hesitated, with my fist balled up and hovering in front of Mr. Bowman's door. I was having second thoughts about the whole thing, but before I could turn away, the door opened.
"Oh, Thomas, I didn't even hear you knock."
Come in, the old man said, as we made our way into a cozy little room with an empty fireplace. He gestured for me to take a seat, and then he seated himself in the chair across from me.
"I have made us some tea. Do you take sugar?"
No, sure, I guess," I said, a bit flustered, as he had already begun scooping the sugar into my cup before I had finished answering. He pushed the cup into my hands with a smile and returned to his seat. The old-timey music played in the background as I awkwardly tried sipping my boiling hot tea. After I burned my tongue, I said, "So, I'm ready to move those boxes now, if that's okay with..." Mr. Bowman raised his finger to quiet me.
"No, there'll be plenty of time for that later. Let us talk for now," he said.
Okay, cool," I replied nonchalantly. I started drumming my fingers on my legs as the music continued to fill the silence. The old man sipped his tea and smiled at me. I blew gently on my tea and dared another sip.
"Do you think I am a Nazi?"
the old man asked calmly. I choked down my tea and hastily replied, "What? No. If this is about Derek, I had nothing to do with that, sir." Mr. Bowman laughed. I didn't know what to do, so I just stared at him and waited to see where this was going.
"Would you believe me if I told you I was?"
he asked with a smile.
"Only for a day, of course," he added.
I thought the old man had a strange sense of humor, but I just smiled wryly and sipped my tea.
"I'm also a monster hunter. Do you believe it?"
he asked in a more sober tone. I was becoming increasingly more uncomfortable. I thought Mr. Bowman was beginning to crack from old age. I even doubted whether I should accept his money. The man didn't seem all there. I don't know, sir. What type of monsters?" I asked. There was a long pause, and the man finished his tea.
"An ancient evil that has seen the rise and fall of many empires. Cursed beings that drain mortal men of their life essence. Demons who exist to make men fear the night. And those who hunt them, they are cursed too," the man said grimly. I was left, dumbfounded in silence. What the hell do you say in reply to that? After one final gulp, I put my cup down gently on the table between us. I stood up and said, "Thanks for the tea, Mr. Bowman. It was really good, but I actually need to head back home and..." Before I could finish, Mr. Bowman had pointed a Luger pistol at me. I froze, rooted to the spot in fear. I couldn't believe this was happening. I raised my trembling hands into the air and whimpered, "Please, don't kill me. Please, sit," the old man said as calmly as ever. I didn't argue and returned back to my seat, holding my hands up the entire time. "Sorry, Thomas, but this is important, and I need you to believe me." Of course," I blurted out hastily. He lowered the pistol and motioned for me to drop my hands. I obeyed. "I am a vampire hunter, Thomas," he said. There was a pause, and he awaited my response. Okay, I believe you," I said, trying not to sound as scared as I truly was. The old man shook his head and tossed his gun into my lap. I jumped up from my seat and moved away from the gun in revulsion, as if I were avoiding a nasty bug. "Take it. I will tell you the truth, and you can shoot me if you think I'm lying," the old man said. I should have ran right at that moment. Why the hell didn't I run? "I'm not gonna shoot you, Mr. Bowman, even if you are lying," I said. "You are an empathetic person. Yes, you value life.
he asked. Yeah, I guess so, I replied.
Then please take your seat,
the old man said, gesturing back to the chair. I took a deep breath and did as he asked. Perhaps it was morbid curiosity that kept me from fleeing, or maybe I was too afraid to run. It's funny. Everyone always knows exactly how they would react in these crazy situations until they're actually in them for real. The old man cleared his throat and asked,
What do you know of vampires?
I thought about it for a few seconds and answered, They drink blood and turn into bats? The old man laughed, and I relaxed a bit, embracing the fleeting levity.
They do. You probably know more about vampires than you think. All those old wives' tales exist for a reason, he said.
So, that's why you have garlic hanging in your basement? Does it actually work? I asked.
I have it hanging in many places. It doesn't repel vampires necessarily. However, the smell of them is so foul, it can disorient them and impede their abilities. They are apex predators, vicious killing machines that are capable of dispatching many mortal men at once. However, their weakness lies in trivial and archaic rules,
Mr. Bowman explained. You mean like how you have to invite them inside your home? I asked.
Yes, exactly. However, they are extraordinarily clever and find ways to overcome such things. But it is these rules that give us our advantage, the fighting chance. For example, vampires are almost entirely defenseless during the day. The sun is their enemy, but their bodies are also demanded to enter a magical sleep in order to restore their powers. It is very hard for them to break from this sleep. Only the most powerful vampires can, he said.
Mr. Bowman, why are you telling me all this?
I asked. Because I need your help, Thomas. The lives of everyone you care about are all in danger, Mr. Bowman said in a deathly serious tone.
He shifted in his seat and stared off into the distance.
I came to this country towards the end of the Second Great War to hunt down the vampire who murdered my father.
Well, did you find him? I asked.
No,
said the old man.
I searched for years, following many trails to dead ends. I hunted other vampires in the meantime, but I am too old to hunt now. I came to this town to retire and live out my last years in peace.
The old man stood up abruptly and hobbled over to an old antique dresser. He opened a tiny drawer at the top and pulled out a black and white photo. He brought it over to me.
This is Ulrich, the man, the vampire who murdered my father,
Mr. Bowman said gravely as he handed me the photo. The man in the photo was handsome and looked to be in his mid to late 30s. He was in an officer's uniform with a swastika on a band around his arm. He was a Nazi? I asked in disbelief. This situation could not have seemed more ridiculous to me at the time.
Yes, he was going to lead the first SS vampire unit. Their mission was to clear camps of Allied troops at night when they were most vulnerable. It was one of the many last-ditch efforts to repel the advancing Allies. However, the project never came to fruition. My father gave his life to see to that, Mr. Bowman said.
What happened? I asked.
It is a long story. Perhaps I will tell you all of it someday, Mr. Bowman said. But it's not important now. The reason I need your help is because Ulrich has found me. He has come here to kill me. But everyone in this town is in danger. Not just me.
I stood up, determined to leave this time. I'm sorry, sir, but this is just too weird for me. I'm leaving, but I promise I won't mention this to... I trailed off as Mr. Bowman dangled a $100 bill in my face.
Here is the money we agreed upon. Take it. It is yours.
Mr. Bowman said coolly. I reached for the bill, but he pulled back.
However, I'm willing to triple the amount if you just do one tiny little thing for me.
I sighed deeply and said, What?
I just need you to sneak into a basement and take a look around, Mr. Bowman said with a smile.
You're joking, I said.
You have experience in this field, as we both know. All you have to do is verify signs of, well, vampiric activity,
Mr. Bowman said. I cannot express enough how stupid I was as a kid. All the gears were turning in my head as I thought about what I would do with $300. I already broke into a basement once for $10. It was just one more break-in, and I would be done, and $300 richer. If only it was that easy. Fine, but I want $100 up front, I said.
You're quite the negotiator,
Mr. Bowman said, as he placed the money into my hand. He then picked up the gun and returned it to a concealed holster under his shirt as he walked over to the fireplace. He got down on his knees and reached a hand up the chimney, pulling down a decrepit black leather bag. The old man got back up and walked over to the closet, and I noticed he was no longer hobbling around. He walked like a man 30 years younger. He opened the closet and put on a long, dark coat and a white-brimmed leather hat. The feeble old man I knew just a few seconds ago was gone, and in his place there was a grim and grizzled veteran. The old man persona was just a disguise, and now I was looking at the true Mr. Bowman, a real vampire hunter. I didn't realize it at the time, but this was our crossing of the Rubicon. The events that followed next would seal our fates forever. Mr. Bowman strided over to me and put a hand on my shoulder.
Come, Thomas. We have work to do, said the hunter. Part 2.
Mr. Bowman drove us to the other side of town. We were in another typical suburban neighborhood like the one we came from, except for the house at the end of the last street. It was forlorn and surrounded by a small cluster of trees. The architecture, I later learned, was Second Empire, but it looked run down and uncared for. The house stood out like a sore thumb. It was obviously the oldest building in the vicinity, like they had built the neighborhood around it. I can see why you'd think a vampire lives here, I said to the old man. Mr. Bowman parked the car and just stared at the building, transfixed. He eventually snapped out of it and pulled out a very old crucifix from his bag. He bowed his head and started muttering a prayer under his breath. My fingers drummed on my leg, hoping he'd finish up soon. I just wanted to get it over with and prayed the building was abandoned. It certainly looked that way. So, do you work for the Vatican or something? I asked. The old man laughed indignantly.
There are other monsters who walk among us, besides vampires, said the old man. You could say I work for the church the Vatican attempted to destroy, but it doesn't matter now. All you need to know is this has power,
he said, as he passed the old crucifix over to me. The old man gestured for me to put it on, and so I did. I examined the relic as it hung from my neck. There was a little figure of a man made of iron attached to the wooden cross. I tucked it behind my shirt.
This won't kill a vampire, but it can certainly buy you time in a pinch,
Mr. Bowman said. He opened his bag again and pulled out a garland of garlic tied off into a necklace. He attempted to put it over my head. Oh, no need. The crucifix is fine," I said as I jerked my head away. The old man stuffed it back into the bag, pulled out a dagger, and handed it to me. I took it reluctantly, but I was compelled to inspect it as it was so unique. It looked to be a well-maintained antique military blade, but more elegant. The scabbard was beautifully crafted, and when unsheathed, revealed the blade was engraved in German. "What does it say?" I asked.
Mein Ehre heißt Treue. My honor is loyalty. It's the ceremonial dagger given to members of the SS, the old man said.
I stared at him in utter disbelief and shock. Maybe Derek was right when he spray-painted that swastika.
It's not what you think. I promise I'll explain everything after Ulrich is destroyed, said the old man.
"Well, what do I need it for anyway?" I asked.
A knife is a handy utility, and you might need to defend yourself. Vampires are not fools. They employ guardians to watch over their lairs while they slumber, he said.
Right. So, what exactly do you want me to do again?
I inquired. I want you to break in and confirm the vampiric activity, hopefully while not being detected. I may not be as feeble as I pretend to be, but I'm not as nimble as I once was either, he said.
That's all, and you'll pay me, right? I asked.
Well, yes, but we still have to destroy Ulrich, he said.
You said all I have to do was break in and look around. You never said I had to destroy anyone, I retorted.
Fine. So be it then. Just unlock a door for me, will you? He requested.
I'll see what I can do, I said as I opened the door and kicked my feet out of the car. I stepped out and tied the scabbards to my belt loop.
And Thomas, the old man called out, good luck.
I looked back at Mr. Bowman and said, don't worry. The car door closed and I turned to face the looming building, and with a deep breath, I started my approach. It was early evening, and most people are already home from work, but there didn't seem to be any signs of life coming from inside the house. When I got close enough, I realized the windows were completely opaque, like someone had painted them black on the other side. Every basement window around the building was either sealed shut or not designed to be opened at all. I tried the back door, and of course, it was locked. Contrary to what Mr. Bowman believed, I was not an expert burglar, and had pretty much exhausted all of my options at this point. I was ready to give up. Then the thoughts of the $200 crept back into my mind. My ear pressed to the back door while I listened intently. But there was only silence. In my frustration, I sighed and walked back to the basement window. I took off my shirt and wrapped it around my hand that was now clutching Mr. Bowman's dagger. With a deep breath, I counted to 3 in my head. On 3, I put all of my force behind one good strike using the butt of the dagger. The glass shattered so loudly I flinched before using my wrapped hand to clear away the rest of the glass from the pane. I stood back up, heart thumping fast and hard, listening to see if I had alerted anyone in the house or nearby. Shards of glass fell from my shirt as I put it back on. Only a few feet of basement was visible from the sunlight now pouring in. Beyond that was a dark void. If only Mr. Bowman had given me a flashlight. I slid down into the basement and instantly regretted my decision as I began gagging from the smell of death and rot. Must be a dead animal. I pulled my shirt over my nose, but it did little to shield me from the stench. My eyes began to adapt to the dark, and I noticed a faint glow coming from further in the basement. I hesitated. Of course I didn't believe Mr. Bowman's story about vampires, but I didn't want to get caught breaking into an abandoned building either. Once again, I did my best to listen for any signs of life, but all I could hear was my heart rapidly beating in my chest. Well, if someone was here, they would have heard me breaking the window. I stuck my head out and moved forward slowly towards the light, groping blindly as I went along. I eventually reached a translucent plastic curtain that acted as a barrier between me and the light. I held my breath and waited. When I didn't hear anything, I gulped down my fear and slowly pulled back the curtain. What I saw still haunts me to this day. The light source was several candles that illuminated a scene of absolute macabre horror. Severed hands and feet had been strung together and hung from the ceiling like Christmas lights. Arms and legs were piled on workbenches lined with trash bags. Bloody saws and knives were strewn around the room like how children scatter their toys. 3 black barrels stood in a line in the back corner of the room, dripping mysterious liquids. The floor, which was covered by a tarp, was caked in blood, some of which took the form of footprints. Jars containing brains, eyeballs, noses, and other miscellaneous human parts sat on shelves like trophies. I started dry heaving, and when I went back, I bumped into the chest of a tall and lanky man. I'm not embarrassed to admit I wet myself as I staggered backward into a table in the center of the room. The table was covered in bloodstains and had leather and chain straps. I quickly ran around it, pulling in between me and that monster, putting it between me and that monster. The man stood there, beaming excitedly. His blonde hair was wild and greasy. When he smiled, I saw his yellow, rotting teeth, which looked to be poorly filed into jagged shards. He wore overalls and no shirt. His hands and bare feet were stained dark from blood, and his nails gave them the appearance of claws and tendons.
I'm so sorry. Please let me go, sir. I promise I won't tell anyone.
I pleaded with tears in my eyes. The man just stood there, grinning, as still as a statue. One of the many flies that were circling the room landed on his face. Yet still, he was unperturbed. Then, without warning, he began giggling wildly as he ran around one side of the table towards me. I ran, crying hysterically, but still managed to keep the table between us. The man stopped.
Uh-oh,
he said playfully as he feinted to the right. I jumped in the opposite direction.
Uh-oh,
he said louder as he feinted to the left. I didn't move that time, but without missing a beat, he vaulted over the table, knocking me over. I screamed like a little girl and tried fighting him off me, but he kept me pinned to the ground. He grabbed my arm, brought it up to his mouth, and sank his teeth deep into my flesh. The basement reverberated with my screams of agony, but I managed to hit him in the face with a piece of old brick that had crumbled off the wall. He let go, recoiling in pain, and covered his face with his hand. I was unclear if it was my blood or his that was dripping off his chin. As I scrambled back up to my feet, the man grabbed my ankle. I kicked it away and fled, but the man was quickly back on his feet, chasing me again. I ran for the window. The sunlight was cutting through the void of the basement. The safety of the simple world I had formerly known was only a few feet away. I jumped up and grabbed a corner of the wooden frame, slicing my hand on some of the remaining glass. Ignoring the pain, I attempted to lift my body up and out, but the man's claws dug into me, and he wrapped his hands around my neck and pulled me back down. He turned me to face him as he tightened his grip. Little beads of blood ran down my neck as he was cutting my throat. My hands slapped at my wrist in a panic, and my vision began to fade. I tried to focus and slide my hand down towards my belt loop. After a few seconds of blind searching, I found it. I pulled my arm back and began plunging it into the man's belly. He gasped in shock and made a face like he was screaming, but he was silent except for the little bits of air escaping his lungs every time the dagger connected with his body. I didn't stop. Over and over the blade penetrated the man. The feeling of his blood on my hand was hot and sticky. His grip loosened and he stumbled backwards onto the floor. He held his hands over his gut, but his blood was everywhere. He looked at the wound and then back at me. He struggled to breathe, but his face was emotionless as he stared directly into my eyes. I stared back, trying to understand what was going on, trying to understand this new world I was thrust into. Everything felt so different. The worst I'd ever experienced in life was falling off my bike and scraping my knee, or getting grounded from the arcade for a week. I was reborn into a new world, a dark world. The man went very still. His eyes locked onto mine. I started sobbing quietly as I attempted to climb back out of the window, but my hands were too slick with blood. I sheathed the dagger and stumbled up the basement stairs. The door at the top brought me into a dim, candle-lit kitchen. Everything was either covered in rust or mold, but I moved past it all without much thought, making my way to the back door. There was a brand new deadbolt installed on it. It stood out against the rotting door and rusted doorknob. When I unlocked the door and pulled it open, I was greeted by the warm summer orange sun, nearing twilight. I tripped down the back steps, falling to my knees, and sobbed until I made myself sick. The contents of my stomach were released violently from my mouth, and I fell over on my side. The adrenaline was wearing off. I felt like something was missing from me, like something was gone forever, and I was mourning it. I curled up in a ball and wished for death. I was a murderer. I killed a man and watched the life leave his eyes. Even if it was in self-defense, would Mr. Bowman's God forgive me? Could I forgive me? In my self-pity, I hadn't noticed Mr. Bowman standing over me. "Sit up, we must clean your wounds," he said solemnly. The old man knelt beside me and rummaged in his bag, grabbing bandages and rubbing alcohol. He's dead. I killed him. I killed a man, Mr. Bowman. I'm a murderer, I said through labored breaths. The old man just quietly treated my wounds. I continued to cry and rant hysterically, but after a while, Mr. Bowman grabbed me by the collar and slapped me across the face. "Pull yourself together, Thomas. I'm sorry you had to grow up so fast, but now you understand the threat we face. So many lives are at stake, and you live to fight another day," he said. I didn't argue with Mr. Bowman. I didn't see any point in it, nor did I know what to do next. He wasn't a vampire, sir. I killed him. I used the dagger you gave me, and I killed him. No, the old man said plainly. He pulled out a flashlight from his bag and shined it into the basement. He studied the body for a few seconds before saying, "This is the servant of Ulrich, a vampire's familiar, a steward of evil. Do not mourn this man, Thomas. He made a deal with the devil." "We should go to the police," I said. "No," he barked. "They will have no understanding of what you are dealing with, and they will die, Thomas. They'll be ripped apart, and their body will be on your hands." At this point, I felt like I had to do whatever Mr. Bowman said. It's hard to explain why. I was just so numb and traumatized, I didn't know what to do. But Mr. Bowman was so confident. He knew what he was doing. He wasn't afraid. And I didn't want to be afraid anymore. Mr. Bowman sighed. "I am sorry, Thomas," he said quietly. "I know it was wrong of me to put you in this situation. May the Lord have mercy on my soul. However, in this case, the ends justify the means." He offered me his hand. I accepted, and he helped me to my feet. He pulled out a chocolate bar and some pain meds from his bag. "Take these," he said. "You will need your strength." I did, as he asked. "Your bag seems to be bottomless. What else do you have in there?" I questioned. He revealed the last contents of the bag, then kicked it aside. He handed me a stake and a mallet, and kept a matching set for himself. "This is all we need now. Come, while we still have the light of day," he said, as he turned to enter the building. Part 3. I hooked the mallet on another belt loop and slid the stake into my pocket. Then I choked down the pain meds. The bitter aftertaste almost made me retch. After unwrapping the chocolate bar, I took a bite, but it turned to ash in my mouth. My appetite was non-existent, and I felt weak and nauseated. I just wanted to go home to my bed and forget this ever happened. The thought of leaving right then and there entered my mind. It would only have taken me an hour or so to walk home.
Thomas!
Mr. Bowman called from the broken basement window. The chocolate bar fell to the ground when I jumped in fright.
Come down here. I want to show you something.
The sick feeling in my stomach intensified at the thought of going back down there, but I obeyed and made my way back to the scene of the crime. Mr. Bowman held up the man's arm and said,
"See?"
The man had a swastika tattoo reminiscent of the armband Ulrich was wearing in the photo. Honestly, I didn't think it was out of place for a homicidal maniac to have a Nazi tattoo. But Mr. Bowman seemed to think this was supporting evidence in defense of his monster story. I said nothing. Mr. Bowman dropped the man's arm and looked off towards the candle lights from further in the basement.
"Wait here," he said,
as he made his way to that room of horrors. He took his time, but when he walked out, he took off his hat and ran his hand through his hair. With a long exhale, he retrieved a pipe and book of matches from his coat. The smell of the pipe smoke was actually an improvement over the smell of death that permeated the air. Mr. Bowman blew out a big, grey cloud.
"I believe this servant of Ulrich was abducting live victims from his master to feed on, and when Ulrich was through with them, this foul creature would torture and dismember them. God rest their souls,"
the old man said as he made the sign of the cross. The torture and dismemberment was obvious, but once again, none of it proved the existence of vampires or Ulrich. However, I didn't have the strength to protest.
"I truly am sorry, Thomas. It was recklessly foolish of me to send you down here. I must admit, in my old age and desperation, I've gotten sloppy,"
he said, unable to look me in the eye. The old man took off his garland of garlic and moved towards me.
"You will need all the protection you can get."
I weakly submitted and allowed him to adorn me with the garlic talisman. I was starting to feel like a casualty caught up in the paranoid delusion of a demented old man. A tinge of anger, or maybe even hatred, bubbled up, but I let it go. I had to think straight for the both of us. "Mr. Bowman, I really don't think there are any vampires. We need to leave, sir. Please," I pleaded.
"Well, since we are here, we should have a look around. If you're right, then there's nothing to worry about, and I will give you the rest of your payment," he said.
I forgot about the money. I almost didn't care about it anymore. But then the thoughts of how much trouble I just went through crossed my mind, and I decided to take it. "Fine, but please, let's just hurry. My mom is going to freak out when she sees me covered in all these bandages," I said. The steps groaned loudly as we made our way back upstairs. Mr. Bowman had me take one of the candles, and I used it to light the others as we went room to room. "So, does vampire hunting pay well?" I asked, just trying to break the awkward silence.
"My papa was a cobbler, and he taught me to trade. He was also a jäger, a hunter, though he didn't want to teach me that. One night, I followed him, and once I had seen the truth with my own eyes, there was no going back. He had to train me then," Mr. Bowman said in a somber voice.
"The incredible Mr. Bowman, cobbler by day, vampire hunter by night," I said snarkily.
"Americans don't have any need for cobblers, so I worked in shoe factories. It was close enough," he said playfully.
We made our way into the front room of the house, and Mr. Bowman walked up to a window. All of them had been boarded up from the inside.
"Give me your hand,"
he said, and together we started prying the boards off. A thick, oppressive darkness clung to the window. Someone really had painted the windows black after all.
"Does this not seem strange to you, Thomas?"
"Yeah, it's strange, but I first thought it was in vampires," I replied.
"Since when did you become the expert?" he said with a grin.
I avoided his smile. I wasn't in the mood for games. We split up after that, searching every room, and I continued to light the candles I came across. Even with all the candlelight illuminating that wooden corpse, the house still did not feel right, like something could jump out at you from every shadow. To my relief, our search was seemingly fruitless. The rooms were covered in decades of dust, and all that remained in them was what was left of the old, rotting furniture. "Well, Mr. Bowman, that's it. There's nothing more here. Can we please just leave now?" I begged, but the old man paid me no mind as he shined a light up at the second-floor ceiling. "Aha!" Mr. Bowman exclaimed as he hopped up and pulled on a string. A rickety old set of steps came tumbling down from the ceiling, revealing a passage to the attic. A breeze that sent chills down my spine poured out and down the steps. Vampire or not, I got a really bad feeling about it. We made our ascent, and when we reached the top, Mr. Bowman surveyed the room with his flashlight. Cobwebs as far as the eye could see, hanging from the rafters like banners on a castle. The cold air was unsettling, too. We were in an uninsulated attic in the middle of summer. That room had no right being that cold, and I swear there was a light mist that gently obscured the floor. But nothing could have prepared me for what we found next. Sitting upright against the far wall was a coffin. My heart fell into my stomach. There's no such thing as vampires. This couldn't be real. Mr. Bowman made a shushing gesture and retrieved the stake from his coat. I did the same. We slowly and cautiously approached the vessel of evil. The old man stood in front of the casket and steadied his breathing. It wasn't some cheap wooden box. Light slid across the coffin's immaculately polished surface, revealing the intricate details of its craftsmanship. Runes and symbols I had never seen before peppered its surface. The air was still, and time seemed to slow down. Mr. Bowman moved his hand to grip the lid. He turned back to me and nodded. I stood as ready as I could be. He flung the coffin open. The old man jumped back in surprise. He scanned it up and down with the light, then turned it to the other corners of the attic. There was nothing there. Suddenly, there was movement in the rafters. The light shot upward, darting from beam to beam. "What do you see?" I asked, voice trembling as I looked over my shoulders. Without a warning, a flurry of black shapes, wings beating furiously, descended upon us. They flew in all directions, and some escaped down the steps. I grabbed my chest. My heart felt like it was ready to explode. Can 16-year-olds even have heart attacks? Relief finally came as I watched the bats disappear back into the shadows. "We must have missed something. He may have another layer," the old man said. "Perhaps we find a clue as to where it might be." But Bowman did not wait for me. He immediately set out back down the steps to continue his search. This old man has completely lost it. Another layer, as if one wasn't preposterous enough. I can't believe I allowed myself to be a part of his sick fantasy. I'm just going to ask Mr. Bowman to pay me, and then I'm gone. I jumped as the lid of the coffin closed by itself. I looked back and watched the flame of the candle dance on its reflective surface. A shiver ran down my spine. This is madness. Forget the money. I'm leaving. As I made my way towards the steps, a bat flew past my head towards a corner of the attic. There was a dull thud. I held my candle out towards it, but the light did not reach it. Inch by inch, I moved closer to the steps, afraid to run in fear of what I may provoke. For a moment, I swore I heard breathing, deep and ominous breaths. Then, the floorboards started creaking, loud, heavy footsteps crescendoed toward me. But still, I saw nothing. The hair on my skin stood straight up, as if there was a charge in the air. And then, I saw him. As if materializing out of thin air, he began rapidly manifesting. It was Oleg, or rather, what Oleg had become. That one well-groomed blonde hair was now long and silver, and gleamed like moonlight. His glowing eyes were almost indescribable. entirely inhuman. But they pierced right through me and rooted my soul to the spot. I was paralyzed, and by more than just fear. The commanding presence of his attire was unreal. He looked like a spectre from the year 1945, and he carried with him a dull echo of the suffering of millions, whose lives are accounted for by numbers in a history book. His ghostly pale flesh split open with a hiss, revealing his razor-sharp fangs. He outstretched a clawed hand toward me, like he was casting a spell, and I felt this huge sense of pressure beating down on me, like the air itself was made of stone. My head bent forward. The garlic around my neck rotted instantly, sending black goo down my body. I wanted to scream, but I could do nothing. I was like a fly caught in a web. Oleg glided towards me, as if his feet never touched the ground. My neck fell into his hand effortlessly, and he raised me into the air. The candle and stake clattered on the ground below. His nostrils flared as he sniffed the air around me. Whatever he smelled, it did not make him happy. He hissed again and brought me to his eyes. His fury was incredible to behold. I could hear him yelling at me just with his glare. Foul, black fluid splashed across my face as something ripped through the side of Oleg's head. Mr. Bowman was standing on the steps with his hand pointed towards Oleg. The barrel of his pistol quickly exhaled a thin wisp of smoke. "Run, Thomas!" the old man shouted. Oleg dropped me, and I crashed to the floor, dust flying everywhere from the impact. Oleg swayed and stumbled backwards. I got to my feet and ran towards Mr. Bowman. Together, we raced down to the house, towards the exit. Candles flickered and died as we ran by them. Doors slammed and glass shattered. Nightmares can't even compare to the horror we had uncovered. And should our feet fail us, we too would be extinguished. We reached the back door, and Mr. Bowman ripped it open. Light poured into the room, but it was not the warm reception we had hoped for. Gone was the safety of the orange sun, and in its place was the pale moon that mocked us from the heavens, basking in our misfortune. A deep and guttural sound cut through the night song of the insects and took shape into malevolent laughter. Oleg's eyes burned in the shadows, moonlight glinting off his fangs.
"Oh man, it has been too long,"
the monster said joyfully.
"My, look at how you have changed."
"It's over now, Oleg. You thought you had come for me, but it is I who has come for you," Mr. Bowman roared.
"I assure you, Homer, I did not come here for you. It's a small world,"
he said with an unnerving grin.
"And while I have enjoyed our little reunion, please allow me now to reunite you with your father in hell."
Mr. Bowman unloaded his pistol into the darkness. The muzzle flash illuminated the scene with each shot, but when the dust settled, Oleg was nowhere to be seen. My ears rang as I started backing up towards the door. Mr. Bowman's face twisted in pain. He gasped as a claw exploded out the front of his right shoulder. He yelled in a way I've never heard a man yell before or since. Oleg materialized behind him and bent his head down to the old man's ear.
"But first, I will make you watch as I kill your apprentice, like he killed my servant. Eye for an eye, Bowman."
Oleg said with a laugh. He pulled his claw back through Mr. Bowman's body, and the old man crumpled to the floor. Before I even had a chance to react, Oleg was already upon me. Once again, he lifted me into the air by my throat. The other hand held up to my face as his nails extended into short blades. He pressed one to my cheek and dragged it across my face. A sanguine drink wept from my wound onto his nail, and he wiped it against his tongue. I prayed for the first time in my life. I didn't know how to, or if I did it right. But if there was a devil, then there had to be a god, too, right? Ulrich drew back his claw and slashed deep across my chest. He hissed and released me immediately. I fell backwards and watched as the monster retreated clumsily into the shadows. His arms held up to shield his face. I looked down to see the crucifix swinging freely from my neck. Mr. Ballman got to his feet and plucked the cross from me. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, Mr. Ballman recited with powerful conviction as he held the crucifix before him. He advanced on Ulrich, and the vampire hissed in agony, unable to bear the sight. His skin sizzled like bacon, but the smell was like burnt roadkill. When Mr. Ballman had the creature cornered, he pulled out his stake. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Mr. Ballman raised the stake above his head and brought his hand down with righteous retribution. But Ulrich parried the old man's attack with his claw, nearly severing Mr. Ballman's arm in two. Mr. Ballman cried out. His arm dangled at his side like a broken tree branch after a bad storm. The stake hit the ground and rolled over to my foot. Thomas, you must finish it, Mr. Ballman yelled as he continued to hold his ground against the abomination. This scene plays in my mind over and over again. Every day since then, I've thought about this moment, thought about how I would do it differently, how I wish I could go back and change things. God forgive me. I got to my feet, and without hesitation, I ran. I ran right out the door, never looking back. You probably think I'm a worthless bastard, or some kind of monster. I agree. I hate myself for what I did. I could have saved Mr. Ballman and countless other lives. Well, this is what I did instead. Thomas! I could hear the old man calling as I rounded the corner to the front of the house. I don't think I have ever run faster in my life. I ran in the street, clinging to the safety of the streetlights, as if they would somehow protect me. The suburb was like a maze. Every street looked the same, and it felt as if I were running for hours before I finally found the main road. As I ran to the police station, I swear I could hear the beating of large, leathery wings. Shadows stalked the skies above me, and every dog in the vicinity howled into the night. Dear God, what have I done? It was as if I had let loose the floodgates of hell. Please forgive me, Mr. Bowman. Before I could even walk into the station, one of the officers stopped me outside. Whoa, what's going on? He demanded. Please, my friend's in danger. He's being attacked. I yelled with the little strength I had left. Where? He asked, cutting right to the point. I don't know the address, I said panickedly. Can you lead me there? He asked. I agreed to guide him back to the mansion of mayhem, and we hopped in his car. Lights flashing and sirens blaring, we were there in just a few short minutes. I could see other emergency vehicle lights before we rounded the corner, and then I saw why. The building was set ablaze, like a cathedral from hell. I've never seen something burn so violently and rapidly. I'm not sure how we didn't see the smoke on our way there. Perhaps some of Ulrich's sorcery, but it bloomed above the building as a massive, dark cloud. The cop and I exited the vehicle. Almost everyone in the neighborhood was outside, bathrobes and all. I was getting a lot of weird looks. A punk kid covered in blood and bandages standing with a cop outside of a burning building. Not the best look. The cop must have got a similar idea, because he turns to me and demanded I tell him what's going on. And so, I did. I told my story over and over that night, and a few times after, but I'm getting ahead of myself. First, I was taken to the hospital, and my parents were called. You would have thought I was dead, by how hysterical my mom was acting. The cop regretfully mentioned, we believe there may have been some murders on the phone to my mom. She didn't take it well. I told the detectives about the man I killed, and they kept saying he may not have been dead, or it was obviously in self-defense. Either way, I still felt guilty, but they didn't seem to care. I told them the honest truth about everything. They were very patient, but they would give each other looks from time to time, and I started to realize they thought I was whacked out. They asked if I would mind doing a drug test, asked if anyone in my family had a history of mental health issues, etc. They believed Mr. Bowman was a crazy old man who paid me to go along with his delusion, and we happened to stumble upon some trouble. I defended myself from a crazy-eyed vagrant, but his homeless veteran friend attacked Mr. Bowman. They likely burned down the house in an attempt to dispose of any incriminating evidence. At least that was the story, until they discovered all of the burnt-up human remains several hours later. Then, the FBI was called. They found body parts from roughly 30 victims, but Mr. Bowman was the only body to be identified. It didn't take long for the town to become a media circus, making national news. We had journalists and news vans camped outside our house for weeks. It was almost impossible to leave. The day the FBI searched Mr. Bowman's house, an agent came to talk to my parents. He introduced himself as I hid around the corner. So, we're still going through everything right now, but we don't think this Mr. Bowman was anything other than a religious fanatic. From some of his writing, we found he seems to really think he was some kind of monster hunter, which is good, because it aligns with what your boy has told us, he said. How is that a good thing? My mother asked incredulously. Because it means we have no further questions for him, and you guys can start the healing process, he said with a gentle smile. What about the part, about how he said he killed someone? She asked in a low voice. I've seen his defensive wounds, ma'am. He did what he had to. Plus, with the conditions of the bodies we found, it's gonna be hard to determine who died of a stab wound. Your boy's lucky to be alive. Not many people survive serial killers, he said. So, that's it? No leads or anything? She asked irritatedly. Well, ma'am, this is far from over. Investigations take time, but I promise you, we're gonna do everything we can to get this guy, and any of his friends. You want my advice, ma'am? Leave town, move to a big city, where you can get lost in all the noise, and never come back. Maybe take your son to a therapist, too. You don't want him internalizing all that trauma, he said. And so, we moved. I saw a therapist pretty regularly. She was a nice lady, I suppose. But there was no way I could convince her about what truly happened that night. Eventually, I just learned to pretend that I'd made it all up, because my mind couldn't handle the reality of the situation. Boy, I wish that was true. Even my mother made me promise I would tell people I was attacked by a serial killer if it came up. Mentioning the vampire made me sound nutty, so I never spoke of it again. Until now, that is. I feel absolutely terrible about this, but I lied to my wife, too. Once we moved in together, it was harder to hide my quirks. I had a list of rules, and there was no negotiating them. Among many other rules, there was no answering the door unless I had approved the person, especially at night. No inviting anyone in without my approval, no leaving the house at night, and no revealing our address to anyone. Our relationship almost didn't make it, because she thought I was a really controlling boyfriend, but then I broke it down and told her I was attacked by a serial killer. I wish I could have told her the truth. I wanted to share it with her so badly, so I didn't have to deal with it alone. But I couldn't do that to her. It's like what Mr. Bowman said. Once you know the truth, there is no going back. Or something like that. My kids grew up with these rules, among others, so they've adapted well to my weirdness. I really have a great family. That's why it pains me to keep the truth from them. But I'm going to fix it. For a while, things were as normal as they could be. Life was pretty good. I was paranoid as hell, but it was always false alarms, stuff I could laugh off later. A car that was behind me for too many turns, or a mysterious caller with the wrong number, stuff like that. Until he found me. I was helping my son get ready for school one morning. He must have been only 8 at the time. His room was a mess, unsurprisingly, and we were on a scavenger hunt for his socks. He was always a happy, light-hearted kid, which made it even more unnerving when he hit me with this.
Dad, do you get scared at night?
He asked. The question caught me off guard. Well, I suppose so. You know, sometimes. But there's really nothing to be afraid of, I said.
Is that why we're not allowed to leave at night?
He asked, inquisitively. I figured he'd ask about all the rules eventually, but I still didn't really know the best way to handle it.
Well, why do you want to leave the house at night anyway?
I asked with a smile, doing my best to deflect his question.
My friends say it's weird. That we're weird,
he said quietly. I walked over to him and put my hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry, buddy. I know it all seems weird now, but you'll understand when you're older. You just have to trust me for now, I said.
Dad, I get scared at night too,
he said in a haunting tone. Why, buddy? I asked.
Because of the man with the big teeth,
he said in almost a whisper. I sat down hard onto his bed. There's no way. After all these years, it couldn't be. I think, for a time, I even believed I made it all up. What? What do you mean? I asked, trying to compose myself.
At night, the man with big teeth stands outside under the streetlight and waves at me. And sometimes he's right outside my window, he said, almost in tears. My son's room was on the 2nd floor. I got goosebumps and stood up. My head was swimming. I could barely think straight. When was the last time you saw the man? I demanded. A few nights ago, I think,
he said, as the tears began to flow freely. Either some creep has been stalking my son, or Ulrich has found me.
Why didn't you tell me sooner?
I almost shouted.
I don't know,
he said, each word between big sobs.
Shh, it's okay. I'm not gonna let anything hurt you, buddy,
I said, wrapping him up in my arms.
I drew a picture of him,
he hiccuped as he broke free to rummage around his room. He grabbed a drawing and brought it to me. Time froze, and I was transported back to that house all of those years ago, reliving each second of it in my mind. It was Ulrich. There was no mistaking it. He was real, and he found me. And nobody was going to believe me. I really couldn't afford it, but I had to move and get my family out of there. They were pissed and confused, naturally. My wife even threatened to leave me, but when I told her a man was stalking our son, she started to come around. We moved to the other side of the country. I figured the further we moved, the longer it would take him to find me. I knew he would never stop. Time must be meaningless to an immortal like him. Chasing me for the rest of my life would just be a fun little distraction for him. Something to kill a few decades. Then he could move on to something else. He had no real reason to come after me, other than the sport of it. A sick game, Virtually no one knew he existed, so why not torment the one person who does know? But it's not me I was worried about this time. Ulrich knew what he was doing. He was sending a message. The Bat is back in town, and he has a score to settle. And he was going to come after me by any means, including going after my children. That was 10 years ago. 10 years of looking over my shoulder and jumping at the sight of my own shadow. Peace of mind has been a rare commodity for me lately. I only ever truly feel safe at church. Whether I'm paying attention to the sermon or not, I know that's the one place he won't dare go. I became more active in the church because of it, and that meant my family did too. It was a great distraction, while it lasted. Earlier this week, I was volunteering at the Vacation Bible School program we do every summer. The little kids spend the whole day learning about Jesus, playing games, and eating snacks, while the older kids, like my son, help out coordinating the activities. It's kind of like summer camp, but it's at our church, and everyone goes home at the end of the day. My son and I were overseeing a water balloon fight, which was supposed to be a reenactment of the Battle of Jericho. We had the kids blow a cheap toy horn, then my son knocked down a wall made of cardboard, revealing more kids behind it, and the two sides opened fire upon each other. My son was caught right in the middle of the bombardment. This was one of those stupid little distractions that I lived for. Wholesome time with my family at church. What could go wrong? During all the chaos, I heard the chugging of an old engine, followed by the screeching of tires. A disgusting rust bucket, formerly known as a van, pulled up in front of my church. It had "Murder Van" written all over it. I started to feel uneasy. As I made my way to the side entrance of the church, I heard a door slam and the car peel out. My feet felt like they were made of lead, and every step thundered in my mind. When I got inside, I found Greg at the front, holding a box. Greg is an overly enthusiastic church member. He's really bad at reading the room.
Hey, Tommy, perfect timing.
Greg said cheerfully.
A gentleman showed up here, asking about you. When I went to go find you, he just dropped his package on the floor and left. I probably shouldn't say this, but he looked kind of spooky.
I took the box from Greg without saying a word. There wasn't anything on it. No address. Nothing. I shook the box. It was pretty light, and something bounced around inside. I removed the tape and pulled out a black envelope. Its contents fell onto the table. A little iron figure of Christ. It still had some of the burnt wooden cross attached to it. This was Mr. Bowman's crucifix. Or what was left of it.
Oh, that's so neat.
Greg said with a dumb smile on his face. He picked up the figure and started rubbing the soot off of it with his shirt. I wanted to collapse on the spot. Greg droned on about something, and I left reality. The walls of my mind came closing in. I couldn't restart my life again. I can't. My kids would never forgive me. My life, everything I've built up for over a decade, is here. I've been running my whole life. I just wanted peace. I've barely slept since that day. I haven't even gone to work. Thank God for PTO. I've spent the last several days researching vampires and looking for other people online who have had encounters. I've been to many forum sites. It's mainly been a lot of wackos and people into role-playing, but I've made up my mind. I'm not going to run anymore. Ulrich isn't going to stop until one of us is dead. So I'm going to confront him. We all wage war with our pasts, but tonight I'm going to finish it. For Mr. Bowman, for Mr. Bowman's father, and most importantly, for the sake of my family. I may be a worthless, pathetic human, but I will do anything for them. Even slay a vampire, or die trying. I sawed off the leg of an old wooden chair and fashioned it into a stake. I've been practicing on a makeshift dummy made of pillows in my garage. The first few stabs I missed completely. Not a great start. It took me 10 more tries to actually stab the stake through the pillow. When my wife caught me, I just told her I was practicing self-defense. To which she asked, "With a leg chair?" I replied with, "Anything can be a weapon." She left without saying anything else. I used what remained of the chair to make a new crucifix, and I attached Mr. Bowman's little iron figure of Christ to it. It wasn't as well crafted as Mr. Bowman's crucifix, far from it, but it felt right. I went to a Catholic church to have a priest bless the cross. He seemed a bit confused, and I didn't help the situation. At first I tried making up some bogus story that it was meant as a gift, and he reassured me that it wasn't necessary for a priest to bless it. So I told him I'm actually a vampire hunter, and I need all the help I can get. He stared at me like I was crazy, then quietly prayed over the cross. I joined him. He sprinkled some holy water on it for some added effect and wished me luck. Greg is a really nice guy, if not a little annoying, but he really came through for me today. He works at the DMV, and using the camera footage from the church, he looked up the murder van's plate number. He found an address only 15 minutes away. I went to go check it out after leaving the church, and what I found was an all too familiar scene. Technically, it wasn't an abandoned building this time, but it sure as hell looked like a vampire's lair. You know what I mean? Adam's Family-looking haunted house. And the walls were completely blacked out. Ulrich should really learn subtlety. When I got home, I ate dinner with my family. My last meal, maybe. It was just meatloaf, but it was the best damn meatloaf I've ever had. I told my wife how great it was, and she rewarded me with a kiss. My family swapped stories about their day, and I listened to every single detail of the mundane lives of my teenagers. I enjoyed every second of it. I wish I had spent more time listening to them, more time doing what I wanted to do with them, instead of living in fear of my mistakes, my failure. I still couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth, and my heart breaks knowing this may be the last time they see me, or I them. I write this now because I needed someone to know. It's been burning in me for years, and if I die tonight, so does this story. Mr. Bowman deserves more than the fate I left him to. And now, people will know how bravely he fought at the end. Part of me hopes maybe my family might find this, and it might help them to make sense of everything. If you see this, I'm sorry, and I love you so much. I've made a lot of mistakes, but my family was not one of them. If I make it, and Ulrich is defeated, I'll post my update here. Take care, and don't be fooled. Monsters walk among us.
Thank you for listening and delving with me into the dark together.
Please remember to leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you feel so inclined. The more engagement this video gets, the more YouTube will push my content to others.
Thus, the following will grow.
All stories read in this channel will be available on Spotify, iTunes, and just about everywhere else. Links in the description.
Thank you for listening and feeding the cause. We'll be seeing you